back to the Childhood Cancer Perspective, and thank you all so much for sticking with me through all of these episodes through 2 seasons detailing the journey of our daughter JC being diagnosed with a rare form of brain cancer, and her mother and I, along with her 2 sisters, fighting right alongside of her. This week, I want to speak about something, a specific experience that I had with JC on her very first admission for chemo in October of 2020. Now, this just came days after her Make-A-Wish was done. We were able to get it moved up and pushed so that we could get it done before she actually had to go into the hospital for her very first chemo. Now, this very first chemo meant that she had to have a port put in so she could have the medication directly into her system versus having to be accessed every time. So they actually put in a Hickman catheter, which, if you're not familiar with that, it is an internal port with the exception of the 2 tubes hang out on the outside so they can be accessed for blood draws and for medication to be given to her. Now, something that we were unaware of, or we were unaware that was going to happen, I think it was more of a surprise to the doctors than it was to anybody, was that when she came in, or when you go in for chemo, generally speaking, what happens is they load you up with fluid. They get your body full of fluid and good and hydrated before they put you through this chemo. It's kind of like not wanting to drink on an empty stomach, okay? You want to make sure you've got something there to absorb what's coming into you and at such a high level of potency as chemotherapy. Now, what happened was we were admitted. She went in and had the surgery to have the port put in. That was the first part of our admission. And then she came back, and then it was to get her loaded up on fluids to make sure she was ready to begin her chemotherapy. Now, it was set to start almost immediately after we got the port put in. It was going to be get back into the room, a little bit of recovery, start the chemo. That's kind of what was going to happen. It was going to be rapid fire, and that's how we were going to go about this. And that took a hell of a wide turn as soon as she came back from the surgery. Now, while she was gone, I was left with that paperwork that nobody wants to read, the paperwork that tells you what all of the side effects are of the chemos, all of the side effects are of not doing the chemos, everything that you don't want to read and don't want to know and don't want to associate with your kids. You are left there to read it. And unfortunately, at this time, due to COVID and due to our other 2 children needing to be taken care of and gotten to school and things like that, it was just me in the hospital with JC, so my wife was not there with me. So I was just alone with her to read these long, long papers. And I called my wife on the phone. I told her all about it. Of course, we had to sign everything to authorize that the chemo would be done. So at that point, we think it's pretty status quo. We have our plan, 5 rounds of chemo. We're going to push through it, and we'll see how everything goes. Now, fast forward a little bit, and she's able to try to eat. She's able to try to kind of just be there and just kind of hang out. And we tried to play games, just trying to get her mind off everything that was going on. And it seemed to be that about every single hour, every single half hour, it was kind of intermittent that she would get sick, or at least she was going to throw up. She felt like she was going to be ill. And then it got to the point where it was a really, really violent dry heaves, and nothing was happening, and it was just scaring her. And she was pumped full of the highest level of anti-nausea medication that they could give her to try to make it better. We were doing Benadryl, we were doing other like Zofran. It got to the point where we put, I believe it's peppermint, like an essential oil sticker that they had that tends to help ease the stomach. That was like a sticker that was put on the side of the bed, so the entire room smelled like a stick of gum. None of this was working. She was continuing to, and I was even got to the point where I laid in bed with her and slept and tried to comfort her. But it seemed like every half hour or so, maybe a little bit intermittent between an hour and a half hour, she was sitting up like she was going to violently be ill. We then got to the point where that was just getting out of hand. And what would happen is she would sit up, and it got to the point one hand where she would sit up because she wanted to go to the bathroom, and she could not hold her head up anymore. She could no longer hold her head up. She couldn't walk. She had no energy. It was just like she was essentially just a limp noodle at that point. But she was very coherent with what was going on. She was telling you what was going on, but she couldn't express 100% her feelings. She was just, I don't know why I can't hold my head up. I don't know what's happening. I'm scared. And she was confused, about a lot of things. Things were really weird. What was going on? And I'd have to sit there while she's on the toilet and basically giving her a hug so she could lay her head down and just kind of relax and rest. And then when she was done, pick her up and put her back in the bed. And it got to the point where I had to call the doctors and I said, listen, something's not right. Like she's been trying to or attempting or feeling like she's going to get sick now. It's ever since the surgery. Like something's going on. Something's not right. So one of the first things that they did was they were going to run some tests to see if there was anything else that maybe potentially that they missed or that was causing her an issue. So they run a bunch of tests, they run her blood and everything, and they come back and they say she has, right now what we're noticing is she has dangerously low sodium levels. Now, to think of dangerously low sodium levels, I had no idea about this, and I actually reached out to a friend of ours who's in the medical profession and messaged her and said, here's what her level is. Now her sodium level was 126. Now normal is between 135 and 145, and anything below 120 is you're really dabbling in extreme severe issues. And that 126 is a very, very low sodium level and something that's dangerously low for a child that is so small and so frail and going through what she's going through. So what we noticed was all the symptoms. She had loss of energy. She had no ability to just hold her limbs up, to sit up and do anything. It was us doing everything for her because she was so just fatigued and worn out. The nausea and vomiting. That was obviously something that was continuing to get worse and worse and worse. She would tell you that her head hurts, that she was confused. These are type of things that are happening. And then but you're at 126. 125, if you do research on this, is something called hyponatremia. Now, I hope I said it right. Just look it up how it sounds, hyponatremia, and that is specifically low concentration of sodium in the blood. That is something that you need a certain level of sodium in your blood in order to operate, to be able to do normal everyday things. And for her, as a child, was to be able to just get food to go down, to be able to communicate with me, to be able to get up and do mundane things like go to the bathroom on your own. These were things she could not do. She couldn't do it. What it turns out, it looks like what happened was that the level, the saline level that they were giving her, the bags that they gave her to get her hydration, was the wrong mixture. It wasn't the right mixture to get her to where she needed to be, and it actually had a counteracting effect. And so that 125 is actually a level that will put you. You're talking stroke level. You're talking seizures, convulsions. She was literally one point, okay, from being at that level. She was right on the edge. And I remember when they finally figured it out, what was going on. They moved us into a different room that was closer to the nurse's station. It was actually a bigger room, which was nicer. So that in the event that something happened, they were right there versus having to run around the corner and whatever. And luckily, there was not a whole lot of people on the floor, so that was an easy fix for us. And then what they did was they hooked her up to a different concentration of sodium, obviously a higher level to get the sodium levels back where they needed to be, and they turned the IV wide open. And you noticed within a very, very short amount of time, she turned around. She started to come around. She started to talk. She started to, whatever. She became so much more like JC as soon as these levels were taken care of. And it was so much more incredible. But I was beyond. This was probably one of the times throughout this entire thing that we were going through, this journey, this shit show, this whatever you want to call it, this fucking circus, that this was probably one of the times that I was the most scared in my entire life, the most frightened that I ever was, because I was there by myself. I had no idea what I was going to do if, God forbid, something happened. And I took it upon myself to reach out to my wife. I told her, I said, look, this is what's going on. She's not doing well right now. She hasn't even started the chemo because she had such a bad reaction to the low sodium levels. that she hasn't even been able to start. So now we're a full day behind in getting this chemotherapy into her, and I'm scared to see what the chemotherapy is going to do, because this just having low salt levels in your system damn near put you into convulsions and put you into a seizure activity, into stroke activity, before we even got a chance to get the treatment started to fix or to help alter and change the course of why we were here. And keep in mind that this chemotherapy was something that was set up far before any kind of research was done, and it was set aside, and it was never changed. So in past episodes I've talked about it. This chemo was never changed from the beginning. We were just starting from day one. And we never had, and we never had the opportunity to really kind of research and decide if it was the best course of action or if it was the worst course of action. And it wouldn't have made a difference in this scenario, but that's where we were. So that was a little bit of a sidebar. But the reality of everything is that we put all of our faith in the doctors and the nursing staff and and all the staff on that floor in Green Bay where we were right then getting her chemo. We put all our eggs in one basket to allow them to really give us the best care. And I will say that they did everything possible to ensure that JC was safe and she was taken care of, and that this wasn't necessarily a mistake in a sense of somebody checked the wrong box. I think it was just overlooked to where she was when she started versus where she was right then, and it wasn't taken into account where those levels were, and we were just going in motion. We didn't take time to take in the scenery per se and decide this is the best way to go. So that was the first hiccup, if you will, in her chemotherapy or in her chemotherapy cycle. Number one, that was the first hiccup, was the sodium levels. And it was, like I said, by far one of the scariest things I've ever had to deal with on my own with her. I was not there with Trish. I was not there with my girls. I was there with Jace. We were there by ourselves, half an hour away from our family, and I'm trying to deal with this the best way that I know how, trying to give her the best care and give her all the options that she has to be able to survive this. And I remember, because this is a faith-based hospital system, that I looked up and there was a cross above the door. And I remember that while she was going through all of this, in which they were trying to get her pumped up and trying to get her back to where she needed to be able to start her chemotherapy, I remember praying and begging to God. And whether or not you're a religious person, or whether or not you have other beliefs, that's completely okay. That's on you. What I'm telling you is that I begged God to make this okay. I begged God to give her the opportunity to be able to fight this and to make everything that was happening at that moment better. And I prayed hard, because it was scary to be there alone by myself, not knowing what to do, but knowing that I had to do the best for her. So they give us this new room, get her all pumped up, ready to go, and then we're decided, okay, you know what? And the nurses kept coming in. They asked me. We had a social worker that came in. She would ask me, and she's tremendous, by the way, and said, you need to go get something to eat. Like, you need to go to the cafeteria, or at that point they had a room upstairs for parents where you could go in and get food, the microwave, things like that. It said, you need to go get something to eat. You need to take a walk, whatever. And I said, I can't. I just physically cannot get up and walk away, because I'm scared of what I'm going to walk away from. I'm scared of what's going to happen if I'm not here, and I need to be here for her, because she's small, she's young, she's scared, she's going through all of this, doesn't understand it. I can't do it. I can't be away. And they understood, and they didn't push, and they didn't make me do anything I didn't want to do, but they definitely gave me the opportunity to walk away if I needed to. And I eventually did get up, and I went and got some food and came back in the room and sat there, and I ate with her. But I ate really slow, because I wasn't really hungry, to be honest with you. My emotions and my body was telling me, you know what, who gives a fuck about food right now? You need to make sure that your kid's okay. You need to make sure that you protect her at all costs. And that's all I was hearing in my mind. So I ate very slow. I remember talking to people. I remember being there. having conversations with them about what was going on, about what I was feeling. We started talking about things that we were doing, kind of getting my mind off of it, knowing that she was safe and okay at that point. And then when they finally decided to get the chemo started, now the chemo really did some things to her that scared the hell out of me, even more, because it was very, very odd to see your child who has gone through so much in such a short amount of time suddenly lose the ability to do the things that she wants to do, lose the ability to be able to get up and walk and talk and dance around and just be that kid. Now you can truly see, and I truly believe this, in the time leading up, so in the time from the relapse up until now, was really the first time, since the diagnosis, that you really kind of knew something was wrong, that you felt that she was that she was sick. It's the first time that you really noticed it. And even kind of once we got the diagnosis and we got the plan set up to come in for chemo, you really weren't getting a lot of. She never was that kid that really looked like she was ill, that looked like she was going through it. She never really did, and she really kind of gave off an aura about her that she was okay. She had a bubble in her brain. They took it out, and that's what was making her sick, and they made her feel better by taking it out, and she had been through surgery, and she really kind of gave it that innocence of a child and never really allowed it to define her. And this was the first time, though, watching this. I mean, watching the relapse was something that you noticed, but once we got into the hospital and I saw this with her sodium levels, and then we saw what the chemo did to her, which I've talked about in previous episodes. That was really the first time you look at her and say, that's a sick kid. She is going through the ringer right now, and she's doing everything she can to try to fight this and try to beat this, but it is a hard road, and it is going to be a very, very hard road for her to really, attack without some help. And so through all of this, it was a humbling experience as a parent, because you're supposed to be there for your kid, and you're supposed to be protecting them from everything on this planet, everything good, everything bad, everything evil, anything that can alter what you envision for their life to be. You're supposed to be protecting them from that. And this was that time continually that we could not protect her from everything that was going on. And because of that, it truly brought me down to a level that I felt like I'm not who I think I am. I'm not this. And listen, I think a lot of people go through this, but I thought I was a really good dad. I thought I was a really good father, and somebody that would go, and one of my things to say is that I would go scorched earth for my family. I would go scorched earth for my kids any day of the week. That's never something ever in life that I would ever change. I would always be there. And I thought for sure that there was nothing that was going to be thrown at me as a father that would be able to slow me down from protecting my kids. And cancer is something that you can absolutely not control. And I'm going to say this right now, and you do what you choose to do with it. But understanding that lifestyle, that food, that where you live, how you live, genetics, they all can 100% be factors when it comes to being diagnosed with cancer. But the one thing that is an absolute when it comes to be diagnosed with cancer is uncertainty. An absolute. Most of this shit happens because we don't know. Cancer is shitty luck. It is the horrible luck of the draw, the worst cards that you can be dealt in life. And it is absolutely not something that we can 100% control. I don't care how many people tell you that if you eat this or don't eat this, or if you live here or don't live here, or if you do this on a daily basis. Listen, that is not 100% rule. That rule does not account for 100% of cancer diagnosis. It just doesn't. A lot of it and most of it, and especially 100%, especially with kids, is shitty luck. Because a lot of these cancers and a lot of these diagnoses come for types of cancers that would be attributed with a bad lifestyle. But bad lifestyles don't always lead to cancer diagnosis. So you can't say definitively that if you do this and if you do this, you'll avoid getting it. I'm sorry. There's just no way to positively 100% avoid it. It is a shitty thing to deal with. It's a horrible thing to deal with. And for kids, it's nothing aside from waking up one day and that shitty luck just hits you. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way that it is. Once again, sidebar, I apologize. But there's a lot going on in the pediatric cancer world right now, and a lot of things that are happening that this is something that needs to be said, and it needs to be talked about. Because what I talk about on this show every single week is the inside look at exactly what I saw in the hospital room, exactly what I saw in the operating room, in the MRI, exactly what I saw, exactly what I was there with my wife, with my kids, everything that we saw, bird's eye view. You're getting exactly that right now. But a lot of things in this world are dealt with by feelings. A lot of things are dealt with by what you hear and what you see coming from the outside and how you process it. And right now, how I process all of this is that what I saw is the worst. I saw my daughter at her worst. I saw the worst things that a parent can see. I saw my daughter in pain. I saw her struggling. I saw her fighting for her life. But I also saw her smiling. And I also saw her laughing. And I also saw her attempting to just grow up without this thing hanging over her head. And I saw all of this. My wife saw all of this. My kids saw all of this with their sister. We just want to make a difference. And making a difference means telling these stories. It means getting these stories out there so the world can hear it, so the world can understand it. This podcast is really just an opportunity for me to tell those stories 100% when social media will not really allow me to tell those stories. A lot of those stories on social media are muted, are banned, are removed, are guidelined because they're too real and they're too raw. And having real and raw stories, unfortunately, means that people are going to shy away. And we don't want people to shy away. We want people to listen to what we're saying. We want you to understand what we're saying without truly immersing yourself. Being part of this community means that you support what we do. It means that you support us for the good stories, the bad stories. It means that you support everything that we stand for. It means that you support everything that we fight for. It means that you donate to our causes, or you advocate in our names, or you share our child's names, their voices, their stories. You share all of this. You allow us to get this information out there that unfortunately a lot of times is really just kiboshed. It's really just put under the rug and we're just forgotten about. I want to be able to share these stories every single week, and I want to be able to give the people an inside view of what childhood cancer really is, and that it's more than a 4% or an 8% budgetary. It's more than a 50% budgetary. We need eyes and ears and people that give a damn. That's just the truth. So every single week I want to tell you this. I want to tell you these stories. I want to give you these inside views, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I apologize this week if I'm off on separate rants and things like that. But like I said, there's a lot of things going on in the pediatric cancer community right now. There's a lot of people that are trying to fight for change. There's a lot of people that are trying to make a difference. And there's a lot of people that are struggling, a lot of people that are feeling the pressure of not only what this diagnosis does to you, but what it does to the doctors, what it does to the insurance companies, what it does to communities, what it does to friends and family. It changes a lot of things. It changes the way that some people are invested or not invested in your life. It changes the way that communities decide how much view that they're going to give you. It changes things 100%. There's just no way to get around it. And I've talked about it before, that people just kind of disappear. But that's just a reality of being in this world, is that when it becomes less of something that you can grasp onto for your own personal gain, which sucks, then you don't want to be a part of it anymore. And that's a lot of what we deal with. So this week I talked, I've tried to focus, I believe, and I kind of ranted a little bit, and I think a lot of my episodes, I'm going to do more inside stuff, but I'm going to continue to talk about, the community itself. But hyponatremia is something that I was talking about in the beginning, and that is low sodium in your blood. And it is something that can be extremely severe. And for JC, in her very first admission for chemo, it was extremely severe. And it was damn near within a point or two of her being into the seizure or even into stroke levels. And it was something that was extremely scary because nobody truly knew what was going on. It just seemed like she was not feeling well. And at that point, and to get back to it, at that point, I think what they were associating it with was they were associating it with the tumor on her brainstem, which is what they figured was making her so sick to begin with. That was what was causing the quote-unquote relapse, was that tumor was pushing in an area that was making her nauseous and vomiting all the time. The difference was once we got in the hospital, instead of it just being she's throwing up everything she's eating, it became she's not getting anywhere. Nothing's going in and nothing's coming out. It's becoming just a violent, episodes every so often, and it's hurting her. And it just kept getting worse and worse. So this is something that we had to fix. We had to change. But it was something that I cannot. There's so many images that are in my mind and in my brain that I wish that I could just flash up on the screen and say, here, this is what I saw. I can describe it. And you can picture it all day. But there's so many things in my head that I wish that I could just put out there. And a lot of times I wish I could put things out there that are really, really scary and really, really gruesome. And not because I want to gross people out, and not because I'm looking for the clout of how gross can I be, or how gruesome can I be, or how much can I scare somebody with the images that I have in my head. No. It's because visibility is really the understanding of what this community goes through. Visibility is truly understanding of what my wife and I saw, of what my kids saw. And in general, there were times when, my wife took my daughter to treatments, when I took her to all the inpatient chemo treatments, and I was in there and I saw some really bad things. And I saw, like I said, I saw JC at her worst possible outcome. And there were several times throughout this treatment, and this was one of them, the very first chemo treatment, the very first admission for this chemo. I remember walking in there. She had her little suitcase, and she was, we walked in. She had pink scrubs that said Dr. JC on them, and she was ready. Like, she was ready to just get this started, and we didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. And it was, I don't know. We were ready for this. But we had no idea the direction it was going to go. And to see your child in a position within hours of being able to walk, talk, and make jokes with you, to not even being able to communicate or get up off the bed or to hold their head up or be able to explain to you what's going on, and be there alone with nothing more than the phone to be able to comfort you and talk to you about what's going on. I hated being apart from the rest of the family, because I really truly feel like that family support helped us in so many ways when it came to JC's recoveries and certain different things. But this was probably one of the first. Well, it wasn't the first, but it was one of the first when it came to her treatment of a time when I did not think that I was going to be able to bring her home. There were other times as well, of which I will talk about in upcoming episodes as well. But this time I really, really didn't think that I was going to be able to bring her home. And it scared the hell out of me. And it should scare the hell out of anybody listening to this, not because I want to scare you into thinking that, you're doing something wrong with your kid or that your kid's doing well, so you should be, you need to be as scared as me. No. People that are listening that don't physically have a personal connection, or you have a connection, but it's not a direct child, it's a grandchild or something like that. I want you to understand how scary it is for the parents. And I know that if it's your child, and your grandchild is going through this, I understand. I know you feel what we feel. But parents just feel it in a different way. And they just, they're supposed to protect, and then you're supposed to protect your kids, and it's just supposed to go down the road. We're not supposed to be fighting this fight, and that we're fighting it backwards. And, we're not supposed to be burying our kids. We're not supposed to be saying goodbye to our children. We're not supposed to be laying in a hospital room watching our children fight for their lives. We're supposed to be protecting them at all cost, no matter what. Through hell, fire, and earth, we'll do anything to make sure that our kids are okay, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. And in this instance, I couldn't protect her. And to this day, no matter what I do, no matter what I accomplish, no matter what I do in her name, no matter what I do in our business's name or in the pediatric cancer community at all, I will forever, as a father, feel like I failed her. Like I failed my little girl. Because I wasn't there to protect her. I wasn't there to keep her safe. I couldn't stop this monster from attacking her. And this monster is fucking ruthless. It does not care about your feelings. It does not care about the color of your skin. It doesn't care about the color of your hair, where you're born, where you live, and what you eat. This monster does not care about any of that. All this monster wants to do is feed. And I can't stop it. And to this day, I will be forever grateful in my heart for every single parent that has been able to beat this monster and allow their kids a chance to grow up, and allow their kids a chance to grow up and make the mistakes that we all make. Give them that opportunity. And I commend all of you. But me as a father, I feel like I failed. And I will always feel like that. Because my daughter's not here. And we did everything that we knew how to do. But it wasn't enough. Hyponatremia, chemotherapy, leptomeningeal disease, choroid plexus carcinoma, shunts, MRI, CTs, and more drugs than I can name off. My daughter, in 520 days, went through hell, and her body went through hell. But I'll be damned if she didn't look me in the eye just minutes before she went unresponsive, before she passed away. And she shook her head telling me she was okay. So this episode, JC, I love you, and I miss you, and I'm sorry that I couldn't fix it. To everybody else out there, please, if you've got comments, you can leave comments below. You can let me know if there's an episode you'd like me to do. If there's anything in our story or just in the pediatric cancer community that you'd like to know more about, I promise you, if I don't have the answer, I will sure find the answer, and I will be happy to talk about it on this podcast. Thank you all so much for sticking with me, and I'll see you next week.